Good morning, students. Welcome once again to today's lesson on methods of teaching biology. Now, in this lesson, we are going to look at the use of chalk and whiteboard in teaching. And this lesson is session 5 of unit 5 of the model. Session 5 of unit 5 of the model. So, after going through this session, I believe you would be able to understand these things as we go through this session. So these are our objectives for the session. So objective number 1, we want you to describe what chalkboard is. When we say a chalkboard, what is it? So outline the guidelines for using a chalkboard and then describe the efficient use of the chalkboard. And also discuss the advantages of the use of the chalkboard by the teacher and then by the student. The next objective is to describe how a whiteboard can be used effectively. Then differentiate between a chalkboard and then a whiteboard. Okay, so now these are the objectives. So we first look at what a chalkboard is about. Now, what is a chalkboard? A chalkboard, which is also known as blackboard, is a reusable writing surface on which text or drawings are made with chalk. So you have to note that some chalkboards are green. That one is a fact. So basically that is how a chalkboard should be. So from here we will look at the guidelines for using the chalkboard as a teaching tool in your class. So the first one is when beginning a lesson as a student teacher, whenever you are beginning a lesson, write the date and lesson objectives at the top left corner of the chalkboard. Write the date and lesson objectives at the top left corner of the chalkboard. So with this one, the objective will help the students to stay on track and focus. It is going to help the students to stay on track and then focus. So the next one is the board must be divided into large and small columns. The board must be divided into large and small columns. So we are saying that the larger column is used for the main content of the lesson, and then the smaller column for minor details. So when you divide the board, that is how you are supposed to use it. You can add a third space to include new vocabulary. So you divide the board in such a way that you feel very relaxed and then very fast as you teach. The next one is the writing on the board must be very organized so that the students can see connections. Some teachers have very bad handwriting, which they have to work on that. Well, I can't tell your handwriting, but when you write on the board. So you have to work on that if you don't have a nice handwriting. So the next one, we are saying that avoid cursive writing because students find it difficult to read. So some of you, when you are writing, it's so cursive, and then students cannot read and then comprehend from or reason from what you are writing. So you have to write clearly for students to see so that they can ask questions or contribute to the lesson. The next one is allow the students sufficient time to copy what has been written before erasing. So you have to give the students enough time to copy what you've written on the board. So you move to how to use the chalkboard. Now you know the guidelines in using the chalkboard. So we move to how we are going to use the chalkboard. So how to use the chalkboard. So we are saying that the board is an important teaching tool which must be used by the biology teacher in a proper way. In a proper way. So these are ways to use the chalkboard. So one, I'm saying that the board must be kept clean for the next teacher to use. The board must be kept clean for the next teacher to use. And also all irrelevant writing must be erased to avoid distractions. All irrelevant writings must be erased to avoid distractions. And we're also saying that while the teacher is teaching, he must keep all needed materials, that is the chalk, duster, rulers, and pointers, within reach to avoid interruption. So as your teacher, your pointer should not be far away from you. Your duster should not be far away from you. You know, there are certain things if you would use in the teaching, it shouldn't be far away from you. Also, we are saying that students who are not used for writing horizontally on the chalkboard should organize and practice chalkboard writing and presentation of diagrams. This one is very, very important. So we're also saying that drawings on the board must be large enough for everyone in the class to see. So when you draw an object or you draw an image, it should be large. The labeling should be so perfect. Okay. Now we move to advantages of chalkboard for teachers. Advantages of chalkboard for teachers. What are the advantages? One, it is presentation. It is presentation. It is presentation in the sense that students do not like oral presentation without writing. So if students find it difficult to spell biological terminologies, the teacher writes them on the board for them. So we're saying it is presentation. And then another one, we are saying that drawings in biology are presented on the board from their books if they are not ready drawn on cardboards. So if the drawings are not already drawn from cardboards, then they are presented on the board for students to observe. So we are also saying that writing on the board during the first 10 minutes of a lesson keeps their minds from wandering. It keeps their mind from wandering. So in this, we are saying that a combination of writing and hearing keeps the attention and the interest of the students intact for a long time. For a long time. That is the explanation I'll give there. So the next one, we are also saying that board summaries of main ideas of a lesson helps the students to write notes. And you know, these notes enable the students to study the topic, studied easily at home, and then drawing examinations. So these are advantages of chalkboard for teachers. So we also look at advantages of chalkboard for students in our next slide. So advantages of chalkboard for students. So one, it is easier for students to understand a topic written on the board as they see the process or method of doing something or experiment. Okay, so we are saying that it is easier for students to understand the topic written on the board as they see the previous or as they see the process or method of doing something or experiment. So that is for easy. So here I'm trying to say that for students, seeing a topic or some points expressed on the board becomes more memorable than just hearing it. You understand? So the students easily make notes since the teacher allows ample time for the students to write. These are all advantages of chalkboard for students. So we are also saying that when students listen to teaching mixed with oral and written presentation, they stay more attentive than mere speech mode of demonstration. That is a key point there. So we are saying that students who sit at the back in class have the opportunity to see what the teacher has spoken about if the teacher's voice is not audible enough. Okay, so these are advantages of chalkboard for students, and these things will help students build their thinking skills and then enable them to have, or they will develop interest in the topic or the study area. So the next thing, we look at the disadvantage of chalkboard use. Now, in disadvantage of chalkboard use, you are saying that using chalkboard is time consuming in lesson coverage. So the next point, you're also saying that chalkboards are less attractive and appealing to use. They are less attractive and then appealing to use. We can also argue that it is not possible to do visual or virtual video presentation with chalkboard. It is not possible. You cannot do that. Okay, so now we know what a chalkboard is. So we look at what a whiteboard is. Whiteboard. Now, whiteboards are valuable tools in the classroom for teaching biology and other subjects. So lecturing alone while you teach, the students are not able to process visual information properly. So a combination of an effective whiteboard presentation with an enthusiastic delivery excites all the students you are teaching. So the whiteboard is usually a board with white formica plastered on a wooden board, usually plowed. Basically, that is the white board. So water-based color is used to write on the board. That is the marker. We use a marker to write on the board. So now we know what a whiteboard is. So we look at the tips for using whiteboard effectively. Tips for using whiteboard effectively. So 1, clean the board first thoroughly before the lesson begins. You clean the board first thoroughly before the lesson begins. In doing this, you are trying to ensure that an eraser or a paper towel or cloth is handy for wiping the board. So you have to ensure that when you do that, this makes what is supposed to written on the board appear clear. I remember some time ago I was lecturing and then the marker has made the whiteboard so dark. So when you write, students can't even see. And then I told one of them to bring hand sanitizer for us to use to wipe. After wiping, the board came back to normal again and it was so nice. So next one, we are trying to say that keep the handwriting legible by holding the marker firmly and press it hard. Okay, and press it hard. So we are saying that be guided by the axiom that anything worth writing on the whiteboard, it is worth writing it legibly. So anything worth writing on the whiteboard is worth writing it legibly. So writing must be done from left to right and top to bottom. That is how the writing should be. So the next one, we are saying that ensure that the marker is capped when it is not in use to avoid the tip from getting dry. To avoid the tip from getting dried. So once the marker gets dry and squeaks, writing becomes very difficult. Writing becomes very difficult. So the last one that we look at is do not erase the board without asking the students if they have finished writing what you have put on the board. You have to ask students if they finish. If they have finished, then you can go ahead to erase that. Okay, so we've learned a lot in this lesson, and then we've learned a lot about whiteboard, blackboard, advantages, disadvantages, and all that. So in this lesson, in reviewing what we've learned so far, I asked you students these questions. 1. What is the difference between chalkboard and a whiteboard? 2. List 10 ways that the chalkboard can be used. 3. Explain 5 ways the chalkboard can be used effectively. So I believe we can find answers to these questions, and when you find answers to these questions, I believe you understand the lesson properly.